unimportant when it comes to European matters, because it has grown a lot over the last 20 years, and this is reflected in the energy consumption. Global energy mix, 1973-2019. Very useful, because it shows us that fossil fuels in 1973 were covering 87% of the total energy global consumption, and 45 years later, 81%. And what happened? We had more nuclear and more hydro. No energy transition, zero. Sorry. And here we come to Southeast Europe, including Turkey, and again we have a comparison between 2000 and 2019, and what we see here, we see fossil fuels contributing 85% in 2000 and 79% in 2019, with the increment because of more nuclear and more hydro mainly. So again, no energy transition. And I think we must understand these figures and the relationship, so we stop fooling ourselves that we are actually moving into an energy transition. If we're serious, we have to start thinking now. But what is the important thing now? Energy security. So what I'm trying to say, and what comes very clearly out of this study, is that the energy situation and the energy picture is very complex. There are not easy solutions, and there are not one-word policies. There's a big energy dependence in the region, both for oil, as you'll see, and refined products, and gas, as we'll see later. Because of the big dependence, we think that one of the ways that the region can actually differentiate its supplies and try to decouple from this big import dependence is to develop its own oil and gas resources. The analysis from the various countries shows that there are promising areas, promising geological formations. There are very few and well-known reserves in the Black Sea, in the Adriatic, and in the East Mediterranean. And if you put all this together, that is, put the Adriatic, the Black Sea, and the East Med, from the exploration information we have, seismic data, and actual drilling and production, we come with something like 5 trillion cubic meters reserves, commercially exploitable reserves. The whole for Europe is something like 8 TCM, because we include the North Sea. If you take the North Sea out, it's 5 TCM, and this 5 TCM comes from the region. So in that sense, part of the answer would be the development of indigenous oil and gas resources. And we see this very clearly in gas, where some countries are totally dependent, but other countries, like for example Croatia, like Romania, to a certain extent Serbia, are producing their own indigenous oil and gas. I will skip the discussion on decarbonization in Southeast Europe, although we cover this quite extensively. We think the approach is not on a pragmatic level. We have one approach in Brussels, says what the countries should do to decarbonize, and then you have another situation in the field where the electricity producers, the transmission operators, the marketeers tell you a different story. And the story is that we need more coal, we need more hydro. Yes, okay, we can include some renewables. Yes, nuclear has proven its importance in the countries where it's already applied. So it cannot decarbonize according to schedules produced in Brussels. So a different approach is required. And now Brussels is stepping back, and Mr. Timmermans is saying, you can take a break. You can take a break, you can produce as much electricity as you like from lignite or coal. Yes, but he doesn't say the whole truth. Because if you take a break and produce more, you're still being punished. And the member countries of the European Union are punished because they have to apply a very high cost of emission costs, charges, which are artificially calculated on a daily basis through the ETS. And I say artificially because the emission the emission rights are distributed in an uneven way from Brussels. So there's a market distortion in favor or against solid fuels. We're not saying that we have to produce solid fuels at all costs, but this is not the way to push solid fuels out of the equation. Like the story that is going around hedge funds in New York and London, where say you should stop financing oil and gas exploration companies, so they are not going to do more research, so there are not more oil and gas productions, which is absolutely nonsense, because the demand situation does not necessarily follow the financing situation. So if you stop Shell or BP or Chevron producing more oil and gas, this oil and gas is going to be produced elsewhere. So you have you don't have a very elastic situation when it comes to demand. Power generation per fuel, we see that over the last few years we have the entry of gas, which has changed a lot the situation. And the installed capacity, there are big differentiations in terms of installed capacity between the different countries, and this is reflected in the economic development and also the demographics of the countries. Energy security, we went through that. Now the story of the day is solidarity mechanisms, group purchasing of gas and oil, and which are not easy because these do not reflect the market mechanisms. I mean, oil and gas is not like pharmaceuticals. They're not just pills. Maybe you'll be able to do this mass purchasing, group purchasing, central purchasing, but you cannot really do this in electricity, gas, and oil. So the thinking is flawed, and the current situation is bringing up to the fore the various different approaches. And therefore, you really need to consider how the market works before you come up with proposals for solidarity mechanisms and group purchasing of gas. And we see here an overall view of the energy dependence of Southeast Europe, which is high, whatever. The average in the EU is something like 56, 57%. It has now grown to approximately 60% in 2015. 2021. And the overall energy dependence of the region is thereabout. So Southeast Europe is more or less following Europe when it comes to the overall dependence. And some countries, of course, are more energy dependent than others. For example, Greece it used to be 76%, now it's 82%. Infrastructure plays a big role, and the development of infrastructure over the last few years has been very impressive in the region. We have new gas pipelines, we have new gas interconnectors, and we have new electricity grids and electricity interconnectors. And now we have major underwater electricity lines, especially in Greece, as Crete is now connected to the mainland at several islands, and a new underwater electricity cable is planned between Greece and Italy. And of course we have the underwater cable between Montenegro and Italy, which became operational almost 2 years ago. So we see changes, we see new projects, which create a much better environment for energy flows and energy exchanges. And here we see a map of the whole region, which we have termed the expanded South Corridor, because the original South Corridor was to bring gas from Azerbaijan through Turkey to Europe. Now it has been implemented after 20 years. It was first conceived early 2000, at the end of 1998, 99. It took several years, and now we have one of the biggest gas pipelines in the world, starting from Baku, going through Azerbaijan, Turkey, then through Greece, through the TAP pipeline in Greece, and carrying on to South Italy via Albania. And then we're starting now to have interconnections, for example, the Greece-Bulgaria interconnection, a new one which will go between Thessaloniki and Skopje. And now we have new LNG terminals coming into the picture, and new pipelines even being planned, like the EastMed pipeline, which until a few years ago it was considered to be too expensive, too difficult, technologically impossible. And now say, when can we have it? When can we have it? But you were the people who were saying that this was a very, ambitious project. It was technologically impossible, and now we say, well, we need it. So things change because the situations of the global economic and geopolitical situation change. But here we have a basic pipeline, horizontal as you see it, from east to west. Then we have Turkish Stream, and Turkish Stream came afterwards because the South Stream, as you all know, was cancelled, and Russia and Gazprom was very persistent, and they managed to get this through Turkey, which was a very good move, and they managed to get this pipe to form the southern axis. So the Turkish Stream, as we see, is the southern part of the overall Russian pipelines to the west. We have Nord Stream 1 completed, Nord Stream 2 completed but idle. We have Yamal and the ones in the middle going through Ukraine, and then we have Turkish Stream, which was built really to bypass Ukraine. The growing importance of LNG, more terminals. We have Croatia, a new terminal. Revithusa has been upgraded and expanded. We have a new one coming up in Alexandroupolis next year. And Turkey, which has As you see here, Turkey has the most, has 4 LNG terminals, and now it's going for a 5th one, 2 of them land, and the other 2 floating, FSRUs as we call them. So LNG is coming very strongly into the picture, and it will help replace some of the gas that Europe is so keen, some of the Russian gas that Europe is so keen to get rid of. Gas market liberalization, it is because we have managed to get main pipelines, interconnectors, and more storage, underground storage facilities. That gas market liberalization has at last happened. And in several countries in the region, we actually have competition at retail level. This followed the electricity liberalization, which took more than 15 years to complete. And as you see here, it happened because the countries are interconnected. We have now market coupling between Greece and Bulgaria, Greece and Italy, and of course, next in line will be Hungary with Serbia and so forth. So electricity liberalization came first. Once completed, or at the same time, we had more gas coming into the picture, therefore it facilitated the gas market liberalization. And we see one example of the major new projects coming up, which is the electricity interconnection between Israel, Cyprus, and Greece, and then Italy, the Eurasia interconnector. Nuclear power plants are playing an important role in the region by producing base load electricity, and some countries like Romania and Bulgaria, which have nuclear plants, are using them to their advantage, and we can see this clearly in the market operation. So nuclear is coming back. The region already hosts a number of nuclear plants: Hungary, Croatia, and Slovenia, Bulgaria, and Romania. And of course, Turkey is now building its first major nuclear plant, which will be ready next year with something like 5 gigawatts. So it's not all of them are going to be available next year, but 1 gigawatt is going to be available. So nuclear is coming back in the region. It's very costly, but once it starts operating, then it can produce very competitively priced electricity. Skip that. These are the power exchanges. One of the outcomes of this market harmonization in the electricity sector was the proliferation of power exchanges. And it happened because this is a European directive. Gas trading hubs and electricity exchanges, because this is how the market is now operating in Europe and of course in the States. Following the energy exchanges, which are really electricity exchanges, we have natural gas trading hubs. And there's a big variation here in terms of the characteristics and effectiveness of these hubs, with a lot of differentiation between them. Gas trading hubs are accepted and part of the European energy scene. TTF in Holland is the leading one in terms of volume and the benchmark. Of course, we have UK, we have in Austria, all countries have, and lately we have in our region. Greece started its own gas trading hub in March, and we see here a benchmarking report by EFET, the European Federation of Energy Traders, benchmarking the various gas hubs in the region, and Hungary is top, then is Greece, and then all the others. And to organize a commercial trading hub, you need a lot of certain parameters, like the liquidity, like the transparency, and the market interest. But gradually the trading through the gas trading hubs is following the trading of the electricity hubs. Some energy and demand supply projections so that we know how energy is evolving over the years to come. We see here, if we take a total view of the EU member states, we see here that demand is more or less flat as we move towards 2040, with differentiations in the contribution of the different energy and fuel. But when we come to Western Balkan countries, we see a slight growth because the economies are still developing, and this is reflected in energy demand. And if we go to Turkey, again we see a sharp growth, much higher than Western Balkans, because the country is not only developing economically, but is also developing demographically. We have more higher population. And this is again reflected in energy demand. And here we have a small analysis on Serbia, which I'm sure you're all familiar with the net imports 2015-2040. We project more imports as we develop. Gross inland consumption is moving higher because the economy still has space to develop. Electricity generation, small differentiation from now, but the constitution, the parts that make the electricity mix are not very differentiated. The only differentiation we see the renewables coming on top a little stronger as we move, but solid fuels and gas will continue to be the mainstay of the electricity mix. And final energy consumption by sector, again we see certain differentiation. More energy is going to be consumed by industry, which reflects economic and trade development in the region, with Serbia playing a key role as an industry hub for the whole region. And final energy consumption by energy form. And here we see a projection in terms of emissions. We had a drop in emissions following the epidemic, and now emissions will start growing up again, and we see how this matches with and converges actually with economic development. And we come to the end of the presentation with the investment outlook of the region. So the investment prospects overall are positive. The 10 years we are projecting until 2030, more investment is going to flow in the region, and a lot more compared to the previous decade between 2010 and 2020. So in terms of planned investment, we see 5 countries, Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, and Greece, which appear to be moving much faster than other countries. And the region as a whole can be considered as presenting attractive business opportunities in almost all branches of the energy sector. And here we see a detailed table. We have projections for each sector, for each country, and what this is telling us is that we're going to have investments of approximately 380 billion from now until the end of 2030, which is approximately 80 to 90 billion more compared to the previous decade. So these are projects which have got FIDs, these are projects which are at advanced level, and these are projects which have been reported or under construction. So we have under construction, FIDs and planned, but at an advanced stage. the sources of finance. These projects can be financed through a variety of sources, which we all review here. So it's not a pie in the sky, it's actual projects which can be delivered. I will not bother to go into the key messages because through the presentation I outlined a few things, but in the folder, which you all have, we have included the key messages. And of course, we're sending also this presentation and the presentation by my colleague, Mr. Theophylaktos, with an email next Friday. You'll get also all the presentation electronically. So, I think I've finished more or less what I have to say at this stage. And Mihailo, it's your floor. Thank you.
Imam utisak da ste čuli svašta, kao što i ja sam saznao po nešto, pošto sam bio uključen u izradu ove studije, pa znam kroz koje muke i koliko godina se ovo radilo, skoro 3 godine, jer nas je COVID omeo i nije nam dao šansu da budemo efikasniji. Vi znate da je energetska efikasnost izvor dodatne energije, kako to u žargonu zovu, broj 1. Korišćenje prirodnog gasa u CHP postrojenjima je najefikasnija tehnologija koja nam se nudi u prelaznim režimima, naročito ove dekarbonizacije koje smo se obećali, vidjet ćemo kako ćemo je sprovesti. O tim stvarima kao i obnovljivim izvorima energije će govoriti generalni sekretar i predsjedavajući Komiteta za energetsku efikasnost INE instituta, gospodin Konstantinos Theophylaktos. Floor is yours.
So, you'll change it to that. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, to that big audience. And this presentation is, yeah, I have it here, okay, all right, yeah, all right, thank you. Is dealing with the findings for energy efficiency, renewables, and cogeneration. First of all, it's going to be some keynotes, some notes regarding the current situation. As Mr. Stambolis told you, Southeast Europe countries are characterized by their differences in terms of structure and in operation. And this is also for the markets in energy efficiency and renewables. We have EU member states of the region. They've implemented several steps towards the adaptation of EU directives, norms, laws, etc., and also the environmental policies and directives. There are also countries that are trying to become member of European Union that also they are trying for the legal issues to implement and to transpose actually the directives into their legal system, including Albania, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and so on. And of course, we have the case of Turkey, which is a rapidly growing economy with all the differences and, let's say, political characteristics that all of you know for actually it's happened in the last years. Another issue that we analyze it for energy efficiency and renewables is Israel, because in a way